All right, there's some serious news that I'm not going to have enough time to fully go through today, but people who were expecting the Mueller probe to tear down the Trump administration, it appears that it is backfiring on especially the establishment Democrats. You have the White House Counsel under Barack Obama, Greg Craig. He is expected to be charged in a foreign lobbying investigation spun off from special counsel Robert Mueller's Russia probe, according to his lawyers. Mr. Craig is not guilty of any charge, and the government's stubborn insistence on prosecuting Mr. Craig is a misguided abuse of prosecutorial discretion. The attorneys William Taylor and William Murphy said in a statement Wednesday. The investigation into Craig comes as the Justice Department is cracking down on unregistered foreign lobbying and consulting. Federal prosecutors in New York have been investigating two prominent Washington lobbying firms in a similar probe, and Justice Department officials in Washington have been increasingly willing to prosecute people who they believe intentionally conceal their lobbying work from the federal government. The scrutiny of Craig stems from an investigation of former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort and his work on behalf of a pro-Russian political party in Ukraine. If filed, the charges would come about 3 months after Craig's former law firm agreed to pay more than $4.6 million and publicly acknowledge that failed to register with the government for its work for the Ukraine. The civil settlement with Skadden Arps, Slate, Mager, and Flom LLP laid much of the blame of the firm's conduct on Craig, who was a senior partner. So this is something they've already been slapped with before. We know that they were actively lobbying on behalf of the Ukrainian government, and they had to pay a fine for it. Now, I don't know. Let's see if there's anything criminal in what's going on here. Craig's lawyers did not say why they expect him to be charged. They said federal prosecutors in New York had declined charges, but they expected an indictment to be brought by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington at the request of the Justice Department's National Security Division. The lawyer's assertion could not be confirmed Wednesday evening. Spokesman for the Justice Department and the U.S. Attorney's Office declined to comment. Craig is a prominent Washington attorney and was the first White House counsel to former President Barack Obama. In private practice, his clients have included former North Carolina Senator John Edwards and James Cartwright, the former vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who was charged in a leaks investigation. The work that drew the Justice Department's attention occurred in 2012 when Craig and Skadden were hired by the Ukrainian government to compile a report on the prosecution of Yulia Tymoshenko, a former Ukrainian prime minister. Tymoshenko was a political opponent of then Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych, who was a longtime Manafort patron. So, to put that into perspective, President Obama's former White House counsel, the person who's basically the legal department at the White House, was hired by Ukraine's pro-Russia president at the time, Yanukovych, in order to prepare a report on the prosecution of the pro-Western Prime Minister Tymoshenko. That is breathtaking because since the election in 2016, we've been led to believe that it was Obama that had stood up to Putin. It was Obama that was the person who resisted all of this pressure from Russia to give in to dictatorship and end multiculturalism and stuff like that. People have been pretending this entire time that it's the Trump administration that has let Russia, go wild, which I don't think Russia is as bad of an actor in the world as many people do, but they're certainly not innocent. As I don't think anybody's innocent. I think that every country has, negative actors at the top and certain people who are better. It's very difficult to call one country virtuous and a different country evil if you really look at their behavior. But in this case, you do have a senior Obama administration official cooperating with, basically a Putin ally. Okay, the report was billed as independent, and while critical in some ways, of Tymoshenko's trial, critics have said it whitewashed a politically motivated prosecution. In its settlement earlier this year, Scanlon acknowledged it participated in a public relations campaign for the report and should have registered under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, or FARA, because of it. The firm also acknowledged that it had been paid $4.6 million for the report and not just $12,000, as the Ukrainian government had said at the time. So they hid the fee for the report. I can't believe that they would claim, oh, we only took $12,000 for a report on behalf of the Ukrainian government. That might be one of the most absurd things that comes out of this story. The settlement painted an unflattering picture of Craig's conduct. In 2012 and 2013, the firm's work attracted the attention of the Justice Department, which sought to determine whether the firm should register under FARA. But according to the settlement, a senior partner matching Craig's description made several false and misleading statements to the government, allowing the firm to avoid registration. So that could be a federal crime, making a false statement, and possibly he could be disbarred if he, lied on some of these forms. In the statement Wednesday, Craig's lawyers denied that he lied to the government or his firm. They acknowledged that Craig spoke to reporters about the report, but denied it was part of a public relations campaign that would run afoul of FARA. Mr. Craig repeatedly refused the request that he participate in Ukraine's media and lobbying campaign to promote the Tymoshenko report, they wrote. They said he spoke with reporters at the New York Times about the report to make certain that the Times would accurately summarize the report's criticisms of the Tymoshenko trial and not rely on information from Ukraine and its representatives. FARA is a decades-old law meant to allow Americans to know when foreign entities are trying to influence public opinion or policymakers. The law, enacted in 1938 to unmask Nazi propaganda in the United States, requires people to disclose to the Justice Department when they advocate, lobby, or perform public relations work in the U.S. on behalf of a foreign government or political entity. In the last few years, the Justice Department has brought several high-profile prosecutions involving FARA. That includes a case against Manafort, who was recently sentenced to more than 7 years in prison. So, you know what? I think it might be a good thing that they're trying to crack down on this. This is major news if an Obama official gets tied in with this Manafort issue. Because then they would have to listen to why that's important. This doesn't mean that there was collusion between Manafort and Putin just because maybe you could make the case that Craig was working under Yanukovych and therefore he would be colluding with Putin. This means that if they were both convicted, Manafort and Craig, the media would have to acknowledge that the Manafort prosecution had nothing to do with Russian collusion. That it was essentially just a vindictive prosecution that was meant to ruin his career in order to force him to flip on Donald Trump. So, that being said, I think that I'll close here, but this is major news. It shows that perhaps, the Mueller probe did contain a couple things that were, they unearthed issues that are legitimate a concern to the American people. They just don't... certain things that are going to come out of this don't have anything to do with Donald Trump. Greg Craig had nothing to do with Donald Trump. It has to do with President Obama. How interesting that is. That's about it. Please like, share, subscribe. Also, subscribe to me on BitChute. That's at Chef Leopard, as well as on Minds at Chef Leopard, and on Gab at Starscream85. And I'll talk to you later.